Hey everyone, it is election night. Brandon Walton's managing editor of Texas Scorecard, and I'm Michael Sullivan. I work for Brandon apparently, we both came sprinting in here, apparently we were going live. Brandon was starting to get early election results in. Certainly not from all 254 counties, but some of the bigger counties we're getting in. What surprises you so far? What interests you so far?
Well, I don't know if it's a surprise, right? But I think the top of the ticket here, right, when you're looking at the governor's race, you have Governor Greg Abbott sailing in pretty easily, right, for a third term as governor. Behind him, you've got Allen West and Don Huffines, who seem to be sort of battling it out for second place. Already, we've seen a concession statement.
But let's note that second place with Greg Abbott at well over 65%. In early voting, that could change,
Right. Right. And so far, we've already seen a statement from former state senator Don Huffines conceding the race. Would expect to see something like that out of some of his other opponents. And so, that's the story right here at the top,
Right. And then, interesting to me is the lieutenant governor's race where Dan Patrick, Greg Abbott in early voting, it's about 68%, I think. Dan Patrick also with a number of opponents is hovering at about 80%, 79.5%. Pretty surprising there.
Yeah, and I think the thing that people are going to be talking about once all the votes are in today, and think something that people are going to be looking at is, look at the difference between a Dan Patrick, for example, right now, who's got like about 80% in these bigger counties. Remains to be seen how that number will change as the night goes on, as we get some of these smaller counties in there, compared to Governor Greg Abbott, who did have to go through a campaign, who is somewhere in the 60s in these counties. Perhaps there's something, why is it that Dan Patrick, right, essentially got a pass, and Greg Abbott at least had to fight and do some semblance of campaigning in order to keep the seat?
Well, interestingly, you had kind of the last thing folks heard from Dan Patrick before voting really commenced was Dan Patrick saying, let's end tenure for let's end tenure for college professors and go after CRT in colleges and that sort of thing. So it'd be kind of interesting again that difference. Now, on the other hand, statewide elected officials, Attorney General Ken Paxton, currently well under 50%.
Yeah.
With kind of the big question is, who's his runoff companion going to be? Eva Guzman or George P. Bush?
And it really could be either of them. I think at this point, when you look at the numbers in these counties, I mean, Attorney General Ken Paxton coming in with about 41% in early voting in Collin County, which is his home county. You can see that very, very, very likely that Attorney General Paxton will be in a runoff. But as far as George P. Bush and Eva Guzman, who are both the kind of battling it out for that second place spot right now, I mean, essentially you could flip a coin. You look at these bigger counties and they're sort of all over the place as far as who's up, but in all the cases they seem to be very, very close to each other.
Right. Well, and I think the other the only open seat on the statewide ballot was that for land commissioner, where you had like 967 candidates or something there. That felt like. But yet, so I think everyone kind of presumed that the eight candidates there, you ended up with a runoff, and yet instead, at this moment, early voting, not all the counties in, it's just early voting, but Dawn Buckingham having a very impressive over 50%. Former state senator Dawn Buckingham coming in over 50%. In the early voting numbers, I think a lot of folks expected, folks involved in those land commissioner campaigns, all kind of saying, "Oh yeah, there's going to be a runoff. There's going to be a runoff." And so, yet here is Dawn Buckingham coming in strong. Sid Miller, Ag Commissioner, cruising, appears to be cruising to a victory over James White and Cary Council for Ag Commissioner.
Yes, and this was a race that I think was somewhat blown up in the media. There was a piece in Politico, right? A national news magazine, right? And you always love it when those national sources come into Texas and kind of take some attempt at some sort of, oh, we're going to like read the political tea leaves in a state that we haven't covered right. They essentially described this as Sid Miller was going to be in for the political fight of his life. What we're actually seeing is much more like a cakewalk and a coronation for Sid Miller, who does not really seem to be facing any serious competition here, in the sense that James White, his closest competitor in this, is still pulling in half, in some cases less than half, of his own vote in those counties. And so, you know, Sid Miller, again, another candidate that was endorsed by President Trump.
Right. You know, down the ballot, of course, and because this is early votes and it is not even complete votes, complete early votes, much comment about state house, state senate, congressional races. Yeah, in some cases, I think you and I were a little bit ago looking at a particular House race, and you saw the incumbent only had 38% in one of his counties. Well, yeah, that was 1,400 votes counted in the smallest sliver of a county. Yeah, and so it is kind of hard right now when you're looking at these early votes. And kind of the caution to everyone as you're seeing some of these numbers go across that these are early votes, and you need to be careful about reading too much into the early votes.
Right, exactly.
Particularly in those state rep, congressional, and state.
Well, in particular, yeah, in some of those districts where you have multiple counties, right? And so you have to have those combined. You have to be able to figure out exactly, okay, what does the whole picture look like in these races versus just what we're seeing out of one of the counties. And sometimes, people have their different support bases, right?
Right.
One candidate's from one place, another candidate's from another. You certainly see that in a lot of cases. But we are going to have, knock on wood, assuming that everything goes to plan, we will have those results, though, tomorrow. We can talk about when we go live here at 9:30 a.m. And we go live to talk about those results in depth.
Right. Yeah. So hope you'll join us at 9:30 in the morning to talk about particularly those legislative races. And there's going to be a whole lot of talking about the statewide races everywhere you look, but those legislative races are going to be really important to kind of see what the tone and tenor and makeup of the legislature will be in 2023.
And one more thing I would like to add is that in addition to the candidates on this ballot, you had the Republican Party of Texas propositions, right? Essentially, these it's like an opinion poll, right? Do you agree with this statement? And you had a number of conservative priorities listed out there. These are, of course, overwhelmingly passing, as you would kind of expect, but are overwhelmingly passing, and are just going to be another tool that activists are going to be able to use whenever the legislature reconvenes next year to say, look, on some of these issues, right? This is what your constituents think about gender modification. This is what your constituents think about Democrats holding committee chairmen. So, this could be a potentially very powerful tool for activists to use as they try to convince lawmakers to pass a conservative agenda in 2023.
Well, and particularly when you look at a number of these, Brandon, things that have been quote unquote controversial, like ending property taxes in the next 10 years. Currently at 74% of the vote, again early voting, to banning child-focused genital mutilation by adults. That ban at 91, 92%. Those kind of things. Where Republican legislators and Republican-dominated legislature have a hard time when you see these kind of numbers arguing against it, and some of them will continue to do so, but others are going to get a little nervous, thinking, "Oh, I want to be on the wrong side of my constituents."
No, I think that's exactly right.
So, all right. Well, we're going to close out here this evening. Go back to watching the returns, but tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. Join me and Brandon here, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube, as we talk about the election results in greater depth with a lot more information at that point. So, hope you have a great evening.